Chapter 40. The intent, Bhāv, is independent, while the actions, Dṛvy, are dependent. As long as one is violent within, every action of him carry violence. The belief, I am the body, this imposed identity, is the violent intent. Dada Bhagwan. The enlightened being, Dada Bhagwan, says, God has called the violence of intent, Bhāv Himsa, the greatest form of violence. And this entire country, India, is indulging in Bhāv Himsa. Dada explains further, intent, Bhāv, is independent, non-violence, while the substance, Dṛvy, is dependent. Dṛvy, physical violence, is not within one's control. It follows the laws of nature, and those who practice external, physical, non-violence, Dṛvy Ahimsa, are not necessarily practicing true non-violence. This form of non-violence may be external, but does not equate to the real, inner non-violence that one must uphold. The essential goal is to avoid inner violence, and that's where the true practice of ahimsa lies. This Dṛvy, physical ahimsa, may be towards physical beings, but this is not inherently wrong. God has taught that the non-violence you follow is external, and you must practice total non-violence, but towards subtle and gross forms of life. However, the most important part is to ensure there is no violence in your own inner intents, Bhāv Himsa. But people don't even understand what Bhāv Himsa means. Bhāv Himsa cannot be captured in a photo. It is not visible in the external world. Unlike physical violence, which is observable, like a film playing on the screen, Bhāv Himsa exists only on a subtle level and operates behind the scenes, while Dṛvy Himsa, physical violence, is visible in the world through actions expressed via mind, speech and body. What God taught about ahimsa is of a completely different nature. What is the first step of ahimsa? It is to avoid self-harm. First, one should look to see if there is violence in one's intentions, Bhāv Himsa. But what is happening now? There is continuous Bhāv Himsa happening. People don't even understand what Bhāv Himsa is. The photo of Bhāv Himsa can't be captured. It doesn't appear in the external world like Dṛvy Himsa, physical violence, does. Bhāv Himsa is subtle, and Dṛvy Himsa, physical violence, is visible. What people express in the world through actions of mind, speech and body is Dṛvy Himsa. But what God speaks about ahimsa is something different. The first form of ahimsa is that there should be no self-harm. The first step is to look for inner violence, and that's where it all starts. In contrast, what is happening today is that there is continuous Bhāv Himsa. Thus, the first thing to do is to stop Bhāv Himsa. External violence, Dṛvy Himsa, is beyond our control. Dadaji says that this is not something to be openly spoken about, as it can cause risk. It's meant only for wise individuals. That is why the enlightened ones, Tirthankaras, didn't openly speak of everything. The Tirthankaras, who were wise and free of attachment, had the ability to make any place a holy place with their presence. To stop Bhāv Himsa, this was the teaching of the Tirthankaras. The Tirthankaras were very wise, and wherever they stepped, the place became holy. Therefore, even if we stop Dṛvy himsa, we still have to deal with the issue of Bhāv himsa. Bhāv himsa is ego. God says in simple words, if you don't engage in Bhāv himsa, then you will be called non-violent. If a living person kills a living being, we don't call that violence. But if they have the intent, Bhāv, to kill, then that is violence. The living being is naturally killed due to the forces of nature, but the person's ego claims, I killed it. The violence is in the intent, not in the external event. Therefore, the key is never have the intent to harm any living being. Never create the intention to cause pain to any being, whether through mind, speech, or body, or even in the slightest. The key is not the action, but the intent. Manifested experiential spiritual aphorism. Only when the intent of non-violence manifests in its entirety can one grant fearlessness, abaidan. Gnani Purush Kanu Dadaji. Jai Satchidanand.